Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're happy to have what seems to be a very popular topic. I will be presenting today 25 game-changing Excel tips. So I know lots of us use Excel all day, every day in our businesses, and what I'm finding is people are creatures of habit. There are features they learned when they first started using Excel, and they just keep using them over and over. And meanwhile, Microsoft is investing heavily, coming out with tons of new features every year, each with each new release. So this webinar today is going to be specifically on productivity related tips. I'm not going to do a deep dive into things like pivot tables and deep data analysis. I'm not the best guy for that, but I do have a good collection of tips. I think you should get some really good value out of it and be able to use it during your day-to-day interactions with Excel. Real quick, I'm going to click through a couple of slides about Apex. Most of you guys know us that are on the call, but we're an IT managed service provider, been in business since 1991, and we've got clients throughout California. Lots of industry certifications you can see there from the main technology players in the market. And we're looking for small and medium businesses, small city governments that need a good partner for their IT services. A number of things that we do, you can see here on the screen. As I mentioned, we're a managed service provider. What that means is we will monitor and manage your technology on a day-to-day basis. We want to make sure that your organization is safe, secure, and stable. We do that by having monitoring going on of your devices, your servers and workstations, making sure they're up and running, they're performing well. If anything goes down, we want to get an alert 24/7 and make sure we get that up before it becomes an issue. We handle wireless infrastructure, wireless security. We have a fully staffed help desk here in Reading to take calls from end users. We also have a full staff of professional services technicians that do IT assessments and projects. So even if you've got your own IT staff, if you need help with an IT assessment or maybe a project to upgrade from Server 2008 to Server 2016, which you should be thinking of right now, we can help out with that. We also have a full suite of cloud services that we can bring to the table where it makes sense for an organization. Okay, told you that would be quick. As I mentioned, we're going to be going through some Excel tips here, and I'm going to move pretty quickly. There's 25 of them, and I think the best way for you to soak these in is to just watch and see what they have and what they do, and think about which ones might make the most sense for how you use Excel. If you try to follow along and click and do what I'm doing, you're going to get behind almost immediately, and then you're going to miss seeing the tips. So the good thing is we are recording this broadcast, and everybody who registered, whether they're signed on or not, will be getting the recorded link, and then you can actually play it back, pause it, try tip number 1, move to tip number 2, try that. So I think that's going to be the best way. We'll send the recording link out. It'll also be on the Apex YouTube page, which you can access from our homepage at apex.com. Okay, so now what I'm going to try and do is switch my screen over to Excel. What I have here is a large Excel spreadsheet with tabs across the bottom for each of the 25 tips. So we're just going to walk through these. I'm going to show you the data I have there, and I'm going to tell you that particular tip and give you a quick demonstration. So tip number 1 is AutoFit column width. So you can see here, very basic spreadsheet, but some of the columns like September are chopped off. Some of the headings are chopped off. And of course, we all know you can click in a column, move your mouse so that you get the left and right arrow cursor, hold down the mouse button and size that column. And now everything looks good on the month side. But I still have some things cut off here. I can go ahead and do that. So you can manually size all of these things, which I've been doing for years until it looks good. You can just want these a little bit wider. But there's a faster way. I'm going to undo those changes and get back to the chopped off data. So now you can do multiple columns. Let's say I want to size the first 2 columns. I can select those 2 columns by holding down the mouse and dragging over both, letting up the mouse. Now I move the mouse to that cell divider and I make it wider, and both of those cells will size at the same time. That's nice, but there's a better way. What I'm going to do is I can also auto size a column if like we see September and these later months are still chopped off. If I just move the mouse between those two columns and double click, it's going to automatically size that column for me based on the data that's inside of the cells. You can also highlight all of the columns that I have here with data in them, and then double click between any of the column dividers, and it's going to size the whole table in one shot. So that's a real time saver there. I didn't realize you could do that until maybe Excel 2013. So, but it's been in there for quite a while. And most of these tips work in multiple versions of Excel. A few of them are very new, but it's a good look at what you can do with the latest version of Excel, which is 2016. Okay, so that's tip number one, auto fit column width. Number two is freeze panes. So I've got more data on this side here, and a lot of times I see people, they're scrolling through big spreadsheets trying to show me something, and I lose the columns. You can see, or the headings. So you can see the months here. They're going to scroll off as I scroll down my screen. And I got to remember, oh, what month was this? And I got to count, oh, okay, that's April. Or if you have a lot of data horizontally and you scroll, it's going to scroll off the screen. So if I want to see my yearly total for this budget spreadsheet, I can't see the expense category over here on the left anymore. So Excel has a great feature called freeze panes. So what you want to do is select the cell that is under the row that you want to freeze. So I want to keep this row of month names on the screen. And then I want to also keep the column on the left with the expense category on the screen. So when I scroll around, they will always be there. And just this data in here will change. So you want to click in that cell that's below and to the right of what you want to freeze. And then you want to go to the View menu. And then there's a button here called Freeze Panes. So I'm able to click Freeze Panes, drops down. I got a couple of options, freeze the top row, freeze the first column, but I'm going to click this Freeze Panes, which will do both. So now when I scroll, you can see I'm scrolling down. That first column of month names stays on the screen. And if I scroll over to the right, the expense category stays on the screen. So I'm able to get a good look at everything and not have to worry which row and column I'm in at any point. So, okay, that's tip number two. Tip number three, let's click over there, is a great feature. If you're not using this and you do some fancy formatting of your spreadsheet, I would highly recommend you you work on this one. This is called Format Painter, and a lot of times, you know, this is a very basic, not very attractive spreadsheet here. And you know, what I would typically do is I would want to highlight these columns here, or these row values here, and make it maybe a blue background and change the text to white and then make it bold. And you know, so I'm going to manually kind of do all this stuff. Same thing here. I'm going to highlight all of these. I can click the blue and the white and make these bold and italics. I'm kind of formatting the spreadsheet here, and but I'm doing a lot of clicks to do that. And if I wanted to maybe make this yearly summary row blue, I'm going to highlight that as well. And now I need to go pick the blue and change my text color. So I'm doing a lot of clicks and mousing around and doing the same thing over and over. So Format Painter will let you do things much more quickly based on something that's already formatted on that spreadsheet. So I'm going to undo those color changes and things that I just did, get back to the very basic spreadsheet, and I'm just going to, oops, wrong tab there. I am just going to highlight those headings again, and I'm going to make that change. So I'm just going to do this one time and get it dialed in the way I want. And let's say maybe make them a little bigger. So however I want it to look. And now let's say I want to do this. I want these values in this column C to look exactly like this without re-clicking on everything. So I can simply click once in the cell that has the formatting attributes that I want, which is blue background, white text, and bold. And then I can click this Format Painter button. And if I click it once, you can kind of see the cell I selected is highlighted here. And now I got a little paintbrush icon. And I can just click in the cell I want, and now all of those formatting changes, 3 or 4 different things, just took place on that cell. I can click it again, click Format Painter and do this cell, but that's pretty tedious as well. But if you just had selected cells you want to make like another cell, that's great. Let me undo these. I'll show you a more powerful way. So I click the cell I want to take the formatting from, and if I double click Format Painter, you can see it stays highlighted now, and any cell I click in will get that. Or I can format all of them by dragging over it. And then when I'm done, I hit the escape key, and you'll see this cell highlighting will go away. And now my spreadsheet has those attributes without having to do all the manual changes. You know, a lot of times you may want to, let's say, highlight some expenses that are you know, over $500 or something. So I can find this one here, and I might want to make that text red. And I can simply click that cell, click Format Painter, and then any other cells I want to highlight on this spreadsheet to review, I can just click around, and you can see that formatting is real fast. So Format Painter is a very helpful tool to copy the format from one cell or a group of cells to another. So if you haven't used Format Painter, I would definitely take a look at that. And that works across multiple Microsoft products. So Word, PowerPoint, you can, when you're doing formatting, you have that ability to copy that formatting across real easily. Tip number 4, moving right along, is filters. So Excel has a very powerful feature that you can actually filter data very easily without doing a lot of searching and sorting and that type of a thing. So this is what we call a table, which I'll show you a little bit later, a quick way to turn your data in Excel into a table. But you know it's a table when I click anywhere in it, and up here on the ribbon bar, you can see I get a new set of tools called Table Tools, which gives me some very handy things to manipulate the table with. And what I want to do is I can, if I click on the Data tab, I'm showing you the feature called Filters again, and I click the Filter button. You can see when I clicked it, it put these little drop-down arrows on all of the column headings in my table. And what that's going to let me do is some very powerful things. I can drop down, let's say this is a table that's showing me on-call schedule for some technicians. I have John, Bill, Donna, and Tom, and Tina, and they're rotating on-call duties, and they have a different cell phone because they're in different areas, and those carriers are stronger there. Let's say, okay, this is all made up, but you'll get the point. But you can see John has on-call duty in January, in May, and in November. And Donna has on-call duty in March and in December. But if I want to give them, let's say, an individual list of when they're on call and not have to have everybody mixed in there, I can just drop down this little arrow and on the person column heading, and right now it's showing me everybody that's in there. If I unclick them all and I only show John and I hit OK, now my table automatically is filtered to just show John's on-call schedule. I can send this to him or print it out or whatever makes the most sense for him. I can undo that by clicking that little control again and selecting all, and that's going to show everybody else that's in there. If I wanted to just see where that Sprint phone is going to be needed, I can click that particular column and only select Sprint. And now I can see February, April, and September, we're going to use that Sprint phone. So that's an easy way to select them. Let me select them all again. to sort on a column, let's say I want to sort by name, I can just simply drop down the person filter box and sort A to Z or Z to A, ascending or descending, and now I can see they're all grouped together by, by the person name that's in there. So what else can we do? You can do filters. You can say, let's say I want to show anybody that has overtime greater than, let's say you can see my overtime hours here. Anybody that has overtime over 4 hours. And you could do conditions and things. So now it's filtering out. So I can see they're going to be making some good money doing that overtime over 4 hours. So that's filters. Very powerful. If you have a lot of, especially big tables of data, filters are a really handy thing to have, and highly recommended that you check that out. Okay, tip number 5. Let's flip over to that spreadsheet. Is format as a table. So this is a function inside of Excel. When you have raw data like this is not a table. I don't have that table menu that popped up over here. Therefore, I don't have that easy sorting and filtering ability. I need to make it a table. And it's a pretty ugly, just plain text thing here. And I'm going to want to make it look better and then give me those table controls and filters like we just viewed on the last tip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the data that I want in the table. It's all highlighted now. And then I'm going to go to the home menu. And then I am going to go over here to the styles section. And I'm going to click format as table. And when I drop that down, I have lots of choices that I can pick to make a nice looking table out of that data with different colors and different shading styles, or I can create my own. But I'm just going to pick one from the list that I like. Let's say this blue table style, medium 9. I click that, and then it knows this is the range of data I already selected. I tell it my table has headers, which is this month, person, duty, phone, and there it is. In one shot, I have a really nicely formatted, nice looking table with alternating cell row colors. I have the filters. I can drop down and do everything we just saw and look at when Donna's on call. So I have all of those abilities to format that with one shot with that format as table function. Again, that was on the home menu, format as table. Again, we'll have the recording here, and you could click through this and stop it at any point and try it yourself when you have that recording link. So there's some other things that we'll see in some of the other tips that also involve tables, but that's the basic options on table. If I click in my table somewhere, again, that's where you can see the different colors, and you can preview it when you move around the different options here. Okay, tip number 6, we got 25 of these things, is drop-down lists. I'm gonna kind of move a little faster here. So a lot of times, when I showed tip 5, I have Verizon, Sprint, AT&T. They kind of just repeat. We have a T-Mobile phone here and there, but I can really type anything I want inside this. I can type flip phone. Okay, and it's not forcing me to pick any particular value. It's going to allow anything in there, which may or may not be a good thing. And I might spell Verizon wrong on this one. Okay, so that's kind of messy. And if there's just a limited number of items that you want, tip number 6 is I'm going to show you how to make a drop-down list. So you or anybody using the spreadsheet can pick like you would from a database program. And what you need to do is have the cell values that you want to have in the drop-down list somewhere in your spreadsheet. It can be a lot of times if I have a spreadsheet with a lot of drop-downs, I'll put all the data on another tab. It can be anywhere. I'm just going to put it to the right here. I'm going to put the values in: Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile. So those are the values that I want to show in my drop-down. And you could hide this column later. We're going to show how to hide and unhide columns. So once I have those values for the drop-down list, I am going to click in the desired location for the drop-down list, and I'm going to click the data menu, and then data validation, which is going to drop down a little box here. I'm going to say data validation. And now you can see here I have some options here. And from this, for a drop-down list, I'm going to pick allow list. So that's going to give me a list of values of the cell phone type. And then I am going to click into the source field and say, where are the values for that list? And I put them over here. So now you can see I'm going to highlight that. And when I'm done, I press enter. And now I have a little list that I can pick. But that's only in that column. Okay, with Excel, I got to tell it I want it in all of these columns. So I'm going to highlight all those columns, and I'm going to hit Control D or fill down, and they all have the drop down list, but it was just selected on AT&T. So you just copy that down to all of your cells, and you can just simply pick who it is or which cell phone is going to be on duty that week. So that's an example of a drop-down list. Very easy to make. You just need to store that data somewhere on your spreadsheet. Okay, tip number 7. Got a big table here for tip number 7. This is quick table select. And what we have here is a list of city names and populations in California that meet a certain criteria that we were using. And you could see if I scroll down, I've got over 300 rows here. So I have a lot of data with all of these cities. It's sort of descending by population. And if I want to select all of them, to format, let's say I want to format this column in a shade of gray or something, I click it and I drag down. How many of us just do this until we get to the bottom? I'm trying to make it go as fast as possible. It's down to the bottom. Okay, that's the end of my table. And now I will go to the home menu and pick a color here, let's say light blue. And now all those cells are light blue. If I want to do the same thing here with a different color, I have to scroll down. There's a different way we can do it. I'm going to undo that change. I'm going to click on the first row and in this column that I want, and I can do a few things. I can select all of the table by hitting Control A. So that's only going to select what's in my table. If I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see it stops there without all that scrolling. If you're outside of the table and you hit Control A for all, it selects the entire million row Excel spreadsheet, which is not what I want to do. So this tip is showing if you're in the table and you hit Control A, you're going to get that whole table selected to do different things. If I click back in here, if I want to go to the boundaries of my table, let's go back to the top. I just, let's say, click anywhere. If I want to go to the bottom of this 300 row table, I just hold the Control key and hit the down arrow, and it took me to the last cell down here at 315. I want to go to the top, I hit Control, I go to the top. If I had a really wide table, if I am in any cell and I hit Control right arrow, it takes me to the rightmost edge of the table. If I hit Control left arrow, it takes me to the leftmost side of the table. So a couple of good tips there if you're dealing with large tables. Tip number 8. Okay, this is called total rows. So there's a function in Excel called total rows. A lot of times we will want to get some totals, like how many overtime hours we want in there, what's the total value of Starbucks gift cards, that kind of a thing. And since this is a table, remember I have that table tools option. I'm just going to get rid of this cell here. I might want to just have it automatically do some totals for me. And I can basically, as long as I'm clicked anywhere in that particular table, then I go to my table tools, and you got some options here under table style options, and I can pick total row. And it's going to add that total row on and off for me that you can see there at the bottom of the table. And then inside the total row, I can click and I get this little pre-built drop down, and what do I want to show in that total row? I want to show the total overtime hours, which is the sum, and it's doing that for me. And if I want to go over here to the Starbucks gift card, again, it knows this is a total row. I didn't build any of these formulas. I can click the drop down and I can see the average Starbucks gift card that we're going to give them to keep some caffeine on them when they're working those overtime hours. So on average, it's a $6.67 Starbucks gift card. So you have the different functions there. This is not the best. Let's say I filter this to see how many days John is on call. Again, using the filter box at the top, it's going to give me the 3 days he's on call. So there is a function here. If we had a big spreadsheet, you can get the count. So it's going to tell me he's on call for 3 days. So total row feature is a great function if you're using tables. Saves you a lot of time and having to manually create formulas. So that's tip number 8. Tip number 9, transposing data. Okay, so a lot of times I've built spreadsheets that look like this, and I start adding data, and I really should have it the opposite way. Here you're seeing I have the type of computers that we sold across the top in the columns, and then the month as the rows. And if I want to keep adding new products here, this is going to get really wide and kind of become unwieldy. So I really want to flip this around and have the months across the top and the rows be the type of products that we're selling. So it's a lot of work if I want to do it manually. But what there is a really cool feature called transpose data in Excel. So what I want to do is highlight the area that I want to transpose, all of those rows and columns, including the totals. I'm going to click copy. So I'm going to right click, hit copy, and then I'm going to click a destination cell. Let's say we want to put the transposed data right here, and then I'm going to right click. I'm not going to hit paste because that's going to look exactly like what I just copied, but what I want to do is hit paste special, and that's going to bring up a little menu here, and one of the options is transpose. When I check transpose and I hit OK, look at that. That took my data automatically for me, and I can size those columns like we said by double clicking in there, and flipped it around. So the months are across the top, the products are across the bottom, totals are over here. I can see I sold 794 desktop computers. So same data, just flipped it for me in one operation. Imagine you have a large spreadsheet trying to do that manually. So the transpose function, I don't use it too often, but once in a while when I need it, it definitely saves a lot of time. So that is tip number 9. Tip number 10 is removing duplicates. So again, I have some very basic data here, and this is webinar registrations, some sample data, and you can see John registered on March 1st, and he also registered on March 6th. So he's kind of showing twice in my spreadsheet, and I want to know how many unique attendees I'm going to have so I can make sure I can handle everything. And I think Tom is registered twice. So I have a few different duplicates in here. And if this is large, hundreds or thousands of people, I don't want to manually go try and dedupe this thing or sort it and remove rows. Excel lets me do that. It's very powerful. So I can select the data that I want to duplicate, and then I can go to this data tab, and over here is a button called remove duplicates. It will delete the duplicate rows from a sheet. So I can click that, and then it says which columns do I want to deduplicate. So I just want to deduplicate the name column here. And didn't quite work there. Let's do this again. Let's highlight this, remove duplicates, and I want to deduplicate on the name column. I didn't highlight the column headings before. So now one value was removed. So John's duplicate entry and Tom's duplicate entries are gone now. So that lets you deduplicate a table very quickly. Again, that's on the data, remove duplicates option here. There's some other options in there if you could actually dedupe on several columns at the same time. So that's tip number 10. Tip number 11 is a cool feature. It's called flash fill. I don't know if you guys have ever used this, but when I first found it, it was really neat. I've spent a lot of time doing this kind of thing manually. This really helped out. So you can see here I have 2 columns here, last name and first name, which is great for certain things, but let's say I want to make a salutation for a letter. So I'm going to do a mail merge. So I want to have the name John Smith in here, not a separate last name and first name column of John and Smith. And you can see the order is last name first, But all I'm going to do is do one. I'm going to type John Smith. And then I can drop this down. And you see it copies John Smith all the way down, which is not what I want to do. But what you do is you get this little tip box here and you can pick flash fill. And look at that in one shot. Imagine if I had thousands of names, it figured out the pattern based on the one I showed it, and then it flash filled the combined name in the rest of those values. So very fast to do. So that's a really helpful tip there. And let's say I can do the opposite. Let's say I didn't have this data any longer. Let me remove these cells. And now I want to have split it out. Sometimes you import names or you get names that are first and last in one cell value. Right now, I can do the same thing, the opposite direction, first and last. So I can type that in here, and I can type John Smith, and then I can pull this down, and I can do flash fill, and the same thing here, and you could see it would just pull those names out. I think I might be able to, let's get rid of those. I might be able to pull both of these, highlight them both, pull this down, and do, yeah, I don't have the flash fill on both of those. Let's see, let's get rid of it here. Forgot exactly how I can get both in there, but we'll type and then I think I can highlight both of them now. Yeah, I'm not getting the flash fill, but there definitely is a way to get both separated out into different columns here. We may have another tip coming up later here. Let's take a look. Yeah. The other thing that we'll show you is how to parse this out with their email addresses. That's on another tip coming up. All right, let's move on to tip 12. I have a blank spreadsheet here, and this is called Autofill. Some of you may or may not have used Autofill in the past. It's a very handy feature. Let's say I'm going to build a budget spreadsheet, anything I need with dates. I can type simply the first month, and Excel knows about months. So if I click into January and I drag this little control in the bottom right down, you can see next to the mouse cursor that's putting the month name. And if I want to be done with December, I can stop there, or it'll start over in January. It knows about the months. Let's say I want to build a budget spreadsheet for the year. It just filled all those in for me. Double click between the cell divider. So it knows about months. It can figure out lots of patterns. If I said, let's say a repeating pattern, 5, 10, okay, let's say we're gonna increase the budget by $5 a month as I go down. So I can now put that pattern in, highlight both cells, grab that little control in the bottom right, and bring this down. And you can see it's gonna repeat that pattern by going up 5, 10, 15, 20. So it's gonna determine that pattern and go up for me. It also knows, let's say I needed to do a weekly budget. I can type week 1, and it's going to automatically extend that out half a year for me to week 26. So very handy. You can do weeks, you can do dates. So let's say 3/1/18. Okay, I can grab that. I can pull this down, and it's going to get me through as far as I want. Let's say the full month of March right here. And double click on this. So now we have the full month. I didn't have to type all of those. I can also do date patterns, 3/1/18, 4/1/18. So I want rows with the first of every month. So I can highlight both of those, bring this down, and go through December. And it's going to fill that in for me here. So you can see 41516117. So it can do any kind of pattern. If you have accounts payable, you cut checks on the 5th of every month, you can build a spreadsheet with that. So lots of different options here on Autofill. Very handy feature. Okay, tip number 13. This is hiding and unhiding rows and columns. I did get an email from somebody before the webinar that wanted to see how to hide and unhide cells. It's pretty simple. Let's say we wanted to take this on-call schedule spreadsheet, and I just want to show, I want to hide the overtime hours and the Starbucks gift card information. So I'm going to highlight both of those cells. I can right-click now that I have them highlighted, and I can pick hide. And now you can see those cells are not shown. They're still on the spreadsheet, and you kind of know because this little cell divider here between D and G is larger than your normal cell divider. So you can tell there are some cells hidden there. If I want to unhide them, all I have to do is select the columns on both sides of that little hidden marker. So D and G, right click, unhide, and now they're back. This works for rows as well. Let's say I only want to see Q1 here. I can hide, pull all these rows up. I can hit hide, and now the rows are gone. So I can print this out, however I want to do it. If I want to bring them back, highlight those on both sides of the hidden rows and unhide. You can also do this from the home menu. There is a cell group over here, and then you can hit the format button, and then there is hide and unhide. So let's say sometimes I get confused. I hide this column here, and then I hide a couple of rows here, highlight a couple rows, hide those, right click, hide. So now I have some columns, a column hidden and some rows hidden. And I don't want to go, okay, keep highlighting, unhiding. I can just go to the format option on the home menu, home, format, hide and unhide, and I can unhide all the rows in one shot. Actually, let me select the whole spreadsheet by clicking up in the left side here, and then I can go back down to hide and unhide all the rows, and then repeat that and unhide the columns. So in a couple of operations, I've got my, oops, I hid them all. Unhide columns. And they're all back now. So that's hiding and unhiding. Again, you can do multiple columns. Just look for that little hiding indicator between two of them to restore them. Okay, this is a tip not a lot of people know about. Tip number 14. It's called Sparklines. So you can see I have some basic data here, and everybody knows for the most part you can highlight data here, and then you can go to the insert menu, and then you can pick different types of charts, right? And it'll show you what that looks like, and I can get a nicely formatted chart. But sometimes you just want to see a trend, and you want to put it in a cell. So Sparkline is kind of a chart in a cell. So what you want to do is you click on the cell where we want to place the Sparkline, and then you go to the insert menu, which I'm on, and over here there's a Sparkline section. And let's say I want to insert a line in there. I click the line button, and now I get a little dialog box, and it says, what's the data range for the Sparkline in that cell? I'm just going to click on the desktop computers, and it puts that in there for me. The location is where I already clicked, and I click OK, and now I have inside a cell a little chart, and you can see it goes up and down as the desktop computer values were sold. And this is something I believe you can just drop down and Control D to fill down, and you can see each of these different types of computers that we sold, what the trend line is here. And then there's some options in there. If I click this, kind of like tables, and I click in one of them, I get a Sparkline Tools menu option. And I can do some different things. I can change the Sparkline color, it's black, it's blue, whatever. And then I can actually click the high points. Now you can see the little dots on the high points in each Sparkline, or I can pick the low points, or I can pick the markers, which are where all of the data values are for each of those values in there. So there's a lot of different things you can do there. And I can change it to column. This is a little column chart inside there. Win-loss, it's all the same here. This is if something's positive, it's blue. If it's negative, it's red. I haven't really found too much of a use for that. But I love the little Sparklines feature. And they're just like any other cell. You can make this wider and see that over time. You can like highlight all of these and make it a little taller cell. So that's a Sparkline. As I change the data, it's just going to automatically update those. So you can see those lines change. So Sparklines, really cool little tool, something to try out. Think about where you can use that. Tip number 15, data bars, kind of like Sparklines. I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit here. Sparklines are really cool, so are data bars. Let's say I don't want to show a different chart over here or a different Sparkline with my trends. I actually want to see a bar inside here, a bar graph inside my cells. So what you want to do is you select the cells that you want the data bars to appear in. You click the home menu, which I was on, and then over here in the styles section is conditional formatting. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but there's a selection here called data bars. And I can pick that and I can see I have gradient fills, solid fills, and I can just hover over this and it's going to show me what my data looks like. So if I just like the blue bar in there, I can click blue data bar, and now I have data bars in with my cell values that are live and dynamic. If this 45 changes to 30, that bar got smaller. 72 goes to 85, it got bigger. And it's automatically basing the bar length on the longest item in my list. So 95 was the highest number of computers sold, so that's my reference, and everything else is based off that. So you have lots of options with data bars. You can also, like Sparklines, make this wider if that looks better. You know, I could put on laptop computers. I can pick conditional formatting data bars and make those green, so you can kind of see everything. If I highlight all of them and I want to use one scale for all of them, because remember I highlighted these individually and that's how it determined the bar length. Now I can go back and pick data bars, and now let's make all of these the same width here so it's makes more sense. So now it picked 145, which was the largest value in all of my cells as the reference level for the other bars. So you can see they're all based on that, the length of the bar. So if you want to get rid of them, all you have to do is go back to conditional formatting, data bars, and I actually need to highlight the cells with the data bars you want to remove, conditional formatting, and clear rules down here. So it's on the conditional rules, clear rules from the selected cells, and those data bars go away. So forgot where that was for a second. So that's data bars, pretty neat. Tip number 16, insert a screenshot. So we're going to do this really quick. Let's say I was designing a flyer and I wanted to insert a screenshot of a design in here. A lot of times you can go to a snipping tool or load one up, but Excel has that built in. You just click the insert menu, and then there's this little control right here with the camera. I can drop that down and it's going to show me any available window that's open. So let's say I want to put this flyer in there. I can click that, and now I have a screenshot of my Apex Digital Umbrella cloud backup solution. Awesome stuff. You should call us and find out about that. And now I have all the tools. I can click it and I can click crop, and I can crop this down, get rid of the Adobe Acrobat extra stuff, bring the sides in. A little hard to click when we're doing the GoToWebinar, but you can see what I'm doing. And then when I'm done, I have that flyer. I can shrink it down. So it's just real easy to get data into Excel this way. So you can bring in a screenshot of any open application, or let's say I'm going to go, you guys can't see this, but I have a browser up on my other screen. I'm going to go to Google and search for the word computer. You can snip an option too. And I got a bunch of images of computers on my screen, and back on my Excel, I'm going to go back to the insert pick this control, and instead of picking from an open window, I'm going to hit screen clipping. So now my option changes. I can go highlight a computer on my other monitor and select it, draw a box around it, and it automatically puts it in. So that's screen clipping inside of Excel. Cool little feature. Number 17. This is absolute versus relative cell references. Let's go to tip number 17. So a lot of times I want to calculate my revenue and my commission based on selling the computers. So my commission amount is $50 for each computer sold. You guys know how to do revenue formulas. I can just hit the equal sign. I can click number of computers sold times the revenue, the price, and I have the revenue, 54,000. I can build that down, fill that down. If I do the same thing on commission, I say equal sign, I click the $50 commission, hit the multiply function, and I go back to the number of computers sold. It worked great. Calculated that guy in January, we paid $2,700 commission, but if I fill that down, it's all messed up because when you do a formula, it's relative. So with this cell, when I double clicked it, it says use D4, cell D4, multiply it by E4. What it's really saying is the cell 2 to the left, which is D4, multiply it by the cell 1 to the left. Okay, so that works because these are going down and it kept that reference. It's a relative reference. Commission doesn't work because this basically said use the cell G1, which is 3 up and 3 to the left, but when that moved down here, 3 up is now a blank column. 3 up here is $2,700. So I need to do what's called an absolute reference. So I click into my formula, and the cell I want to always be locked and not vary as the data goes down is this commission amount, because that's where it is. It's fixed. And that's my cell G1. So all you need to do is put a dollar sign in front of the G and the dollar sign inside of the 1, and it's going to lock it into that cell. I hit enter. Now when I copy that down, it's correct. And if I double click in one, you can see it's using G1, multiplying it by the computers sold in that row. So that's an absolute reference versus a relative reference. That's tip number 17. Tip number 18. This is the show formulas command. This is pretty cool. This will be a fast one, but if you have spreadsheets with a lot of formulas, you may or may not have tried this. It's very cool. So a lot of times, like I just did, I want to see what my formula is. I can double click. I can see Excel is showing that. I can check this formula. I can check this formula, and and see what they are. And there's an easier way. If I hold down the control key and I hit the tilde. Now the tilde, I'm going to type it in here on my keyboard, is in the upper left, and it looks like this guy right here. That's a tilde. If I hit control, hold down control, and I hit tilde, look at my spreadsheet. It just changed, and I can see all of my formulas and verify them. A lot of people use spreadsheets and there's errors, which isn't a good thing, so you want to check them. So all of my sum formulas, my counts and averages, all of those are here. The relative, absolute cell references. So that's control tilde, brings it back. I can just keep toggling between that. So great tip there. Tip number 19, text to columns. Okay, so this is what I was trying to do earlier. Okay, I wanted to get this text into 2 columns, first and last. Forgot, you do it a different way. So I type those column headings, I select the data I want to split out, and then I go to the data function, and there is a text to columns button here. I pull that up, and now I fill out that dialog box. And this is kind of like when you do a mail merge, it's delimited by something. In this case, my delimiter, the value between the first and last name is a space. It could be a comma if you import this data, but it is delimited. I'm going to click next, and now I tell it what it's delimited by. In this case, it figured it out. It's delimited by space. If it was comma, you could pick that. It's showing me a preview of my finished data. Then I hit next, and now I need to pick my destination rows. So now I'm going to go in here and pick my destination rows and click finish. And there you go. So it parsed that out for me automatically. Again, if I had thousands of names, that could be a real hassle. So that's data text to columns. Conditional formatting, tip number 20. So I have a spreadsheet here, unless I'm going to review this with my manager, and I want to highlight certain things to talk about. I don't want to go through each cell and get confused. I want to just show my manager anything that has a selling price of less than $130. I want to highlight in red so we can talk about why that's the case. We're not making enough profit on that. So what you do is you highlight the area that you want to format conditionally. You want to show those red cells, and then you hit Home, Conditional Formatting, and you can pick Highlight Cell Rules. And I wanted to show anything with a selling price of less than $1,030. Actually, I didn't want to highlight the whole spreadsheet. I just want to show the selling price of less than $1,030. So I'm going to hit Conditional Formatting again, Highlight Cell Rules, less than, and it knows it picked one of the cell values. I'm going to say less than 1,030, and I'm going to hit OK. And now you can see it automatically made those cells that I want to talk about red, less than 1,030. This is not less. So that's conditional formatting. There's lots of other options in there. Go in and play with that, less than, between, dates, duplicate values. You can have it automatically point out. Very powerful. Let Excel do the work. Okay, tip number 21, quick analysis tool. Okay, so we've done a lot of individual things, making cells red, formatting as tables. Excel gives you kind of a universal way. I can highlight the data in this section, and then I get this little control at the bottom. It's called the quick analysis tool, and it gives me a lot of quick options. So on the formatting, I could automatically make data bars. I can change colors, icon set. I haven't really found a use. Some people like that. I can highlight things greater than a value. I can show the top 10 values. I can quickly see what charts of that data would look like. Again, this is the quick analysis tool, so I can get an idea of how I want to present it. I could look at some totals, sums, averages. You can see it's just putting all of that in there automatically for me, very quick. Even have those Sparklines I can look at. So quick analysis tool may or may not work for you if you don't want to do the individual formatting. But again, just highlight your data. You'll get the little control on the bottom right, and that's the quick analysis tool. Tip number 22, 3D referencing. Again, this one's going to be a good one to watch back on the recording. Let's say I have here on tip 20, I had computers sold in 2016, tip 21, computers sold in 2017. On tip 22, I want to add those up from both of those previous tabs. That's called 3D referencing. So what I want to do, first I click in the cell. I want to put the total of the computers sold for 2016 and 2017 in this cell. I'm going to go click my auto sum button, and now it's asking me to put data in. I'm going to go click tip 20, which is the computers sold in 2016. I'm going to click in that cell because I want to add up the computers sold, and then I'm going to hold the shift key down. I'm holding the shift key down now, and then I'm going to click the other tab. If I had 10 tabs, I could click all of them, the end one. It's going to select both. See how you have both of these now are in green? So I've got both of those after I hit shift highlighted, and then I'm going to press enter, and now you can see I have the total from both tip 20 and tip 21 in here, and I can now fill this down, and you can do the same for average price. Any function you want to do, you can do with 3D referencing. Since we're kind of getting down to the timeline here, I'm going to move on to the next tip. But again, the recording will be good. So tip 23, this is really cool. These are going to go pretty fast. This is called filled maps. Okay, I have a list of counties in California. It's not all of them. It's the size Apex deals with. And what I want to do here, you got to have an internet connection for this. So I select the data, including the titles, and Excel is going to analyze this. I'm going to go to the Insert menu, and there is a Maps button right here, okay? So I'm going to click Map, and I'm going to insert a map. Check that out. I didn't draw that state. Excel did. It went out through Bing, and it found out where Lake County was, where each of these counties were. And I can size this, make it a nice looking chart. It's shading it based on population, which is my second data value. I can go in here and I can add data labels so I can see the population in any county. I can hover over one. It tells me this is Lake County, this is Lassen County. So any of the counties that I had data in here, which are under 100,000 population, it's going to show me on a map. This could have been states, sales by state, all kinds of things. If it can go figure it out on Bing, it's going to make an educated guess. And now I have a nice little state map to talk about and figure out where our territories are based on population. Okay, tip 24. These are real quick. These are just mouse, tip 24 and 25 are mouse and keyboard tips. Okay, so mouse tips. You can double click on a menu. If you needed more room, I'm going to go up to the home menu. I'm going to double click it. It just hid. If I want to go pick something, it's going to pop up and I can pick it. But when I work back down to my spreadsheet, the menu's hidden. Want to bring it back and lock it in the ribbon bar, I double click it again. So that's double clicking on a menu. If I click on a menu and I use my mouse scroll wheel, so I'm scrolling my mouse, it's scrolling between all of the menus. Sometimes you don't know where your option is and you can just scroll. You don't have to keep clicking and moving around. So that's clicking on a menu and scrolling. I can double click on a tab name. You can see I have all these tabs out here. Instead of right clicking and hitting rename and going through all that, I can just double click a tab and rename it. Let's call this one tip number 170, okay? So I've renamed my tab. So double click on a tab name, quick to rename if you're using tabs. Let's go back to tip 24. If you have a lot of tabs, like I got to scroll around on these tabs all the time. If I want to go to tip 23, I got to scroll. It's kind of annoying. If I right click on my little tab arrow, I've got a list of all of them. There's tab 23, boom, I'm on it. There's my nice California map. And then the final thing, you can click in a cell border to go to different points in your spreadsheet. So let's pull up, where was that one? There's a long list of my counties. I have that long 300 row list. Here we go. So this is cool. I didn't know this. If you click in a cell and then I double click on the border of any side of the cell, it's going to take me to the end of the spreadsheet. So I double clicked on the bottom of that cell and it took me to the bottom. If I want to go back to the top, I can double click on that top section and it takes me to the top. If I had a wide spreadsheet and I double click here, I double click on the right side, it's going to take me to the right edge. Double click on the left edge, takes you to the left edge of the screen. So you're not scrolling around very much. All right. My final tip, thanks for hanging in there. We're a little bit over our time. Tip number 25, keyboard shortcuts. Okay, there's a number of those as well. So if I go to a spreadsheet here, I can hit Control Home to take me to the first cell in my spreadsheet, Control End to take me to the last cell. It's not the bottom cell of the spreadsheet. It's between the top and bottom here of what actually I have data in, what cells I have the data in. I can hit, let's say I click here, I can hit Alt equals, and it puts a sum in there in one shot. So that's Alt equals. If I hit, say I'm in this row and I hit Shift, I'm holding Shift and I hit spacebar, it just highlighted the entire row. If I'm in this column E and I hit Shift Control spacebar, Shift spacebar highlights the row, Control spacebar highlights the column. So I have that real easy. I'm not having to move my mouse around and click too much. And then similar to clicking in a cell border, I can hold the Control key down and I can hit the arrow key. So Control left takes me to the left side, Control right takes me to the right side, Control down takes me to the bottom, Control up takes me to the top. That's some keyboard shortcuts. That is tip 25. I'm hoping you guys got some good value out of this. I'm going to flip real quick back to PowerPoint and I'm going to show, hopefully you guys can see the PowerPoint here. And our next topic, we don't have time, we're over for questions. I will download the questions and we will respond to any of those that came in. But since we're out of time, I wanted to make sure get your feedback. Okay, we've done 5 or 6 of these now. What would you guys like to see? If you have a topic you'd like us to do a webinar on, we can look at what people want and see if we can put that together. You can just simply email george@apex.com, or you have the invite for this webinar. You'll get the recorded link. You can reply to that and I'll get that. We do them on the 3rd Thursday of every month. So the next one will be April 19th. 2018, and we can see what people want to talk about and see if we can put that together. So again, I apologize for running over our hour for a little bit. Hopefully you got some good tips out of this. And again, we will send out the recorded link, and you can watch this back and try some of these tips on your own. It may have been a little bit of overwhelming, but when you're trying them out with a spreadsheet you use, it's actually quite simple. So again, thanks everybody for participating. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording and end the call. Have a great day.